Hey, we are here today with Come On and Hang Out. We are with our Patricia, our Amy, and James. James is from the UK. He saw some stuff on Unscrambled and he's come to probably just agree with Patricia. But Patricia, very quickly explain what you did and then we'll go through and then we'll talk to James and we'll talk to Amy. But
Or the other way to look at it is the Star Trek. It's an enterprise. Captain Kirk. Kirk is the Scottish word for church. And
Oh, wow.
on the one side, he's got Spock, which is pure logic. And the other side, he's got Bones, McCoy, which is the doctor who's benevolent and about saving lives. So you've got compassion and logic. And you are the captain of your vessel when you make the decision based on the information from those two.
Oh, yeah.
But that is to boldly go where no one has gone before, because that's misleading. That's taking you off to this fictitious space.
Yes.
The only orbit is
Right.
where things are going round and round in people's imaginations.
we're the ones going round and round in our minds.
Yeah,
That's right. Yeah.
they flip everything. I mean, basically, they've taken the torus fields of Earth and they've stood us on the outside of the torus field and said we're on a ball.
Yes.
That's not.
That's
I mean,
right.
we're on the earthing plane between those torus fields. We're on the what? Well, I prefer to say, rather than say the Earth is flat, because people will think of land. If you say it's 73% water, natural water level, because obviously you've got mountains and you've got ocean floors, but generally the average with the way, I mean, water doesn't lie and it holds memory. Whatever shape you put it in, it's going to be flat on the surface. It doesn't bend unless there's some trickery on it.
Exactly. Yes.
Exactly, yeah. Water can't find its level, but that's the saddest bit where we all are is that even Amy, who's probably a bit more newer into this, and she hit the Unscrambled, and then her whole life changed because now it's opened up for her to see a completely different view of what she thought before.
I know. That's right. I mean, I was waking up a few years ago due to certain, things that supposedly occurred here in America that, was put out by the media, and they were probably just stories. And I woke up to that quite by accident. On YouTube, just one thing led to another. I was just looking up a pretty song that I liked, and one thing led to another, and I found out about a certain thing that occurred here in America that is, wasn't really true. It was put out by the mainstream media for an agenda, because we have I think they call it the Hegelian process. I know I'm not pronouncing it right, but basically the government kind of creates a problem. The people ask for help, and then the government goes in and puts that's what I'm talking about, James. And then we beg them for, please help us, government, but they orchestrated or staged the problem in the first place. So what I'm saying is I kind of woke up to that. But when we were following this one major high profile case that really got everybody all over the world interested and really emotional and upset about, and that's when we found all these discrepancies. And then Karen actually was taking a look at the footage they gave us, and she slowed it down, and she was finding all these things in it, that were not right, that we could tell was not right, that was like maybe green screens and things like that. And so that was really, my eyes just kept opening even more. So yeah, I'm really awake, and I always one time, just thinking about it, it occurred to me that I felt like we probably lived on a flat earth, and I never, or, that it wasn't the spinning globe or whatever. And I was taught my whole life, of course, that, we live on the spinning globe and the gravity and everything else. And when we learned it in school, the children asked, well, how don't we fall off of it if we're like on the side and upside down? And, well, gravity holds us on and this and that. But it just occurred to me one time, I was thinking, and I thought, I think maybe it's as they used to say that it was flat, but I didn't think anybody in the world thought like that. I just thought maybe I was just, I don't want to say losing my mind, but like maybe I was really off. And then I just happened to see on YouTube that there's a community of people that believe that. And I was like, so I'm not alone, but I still wasn't sure. But then when I met Karen, and she told me, that she was part of the community of, the flat earth. And then I was like, and she just explained some things to me. And then, I could see it, based on what she told me. The one thing about Karen that's great, she just will tell you, and she's very, how she explained things. She always says, I can't make anybody see it, but she puts it out there and lets you see it for yourself. And she's woken a lot of people up. Having you, Karen, when the unscrambled, you just woke so many people up. And people just
Yeah.
love Karen because, everybody on her channel, her subscribers, we just love her because of how she just shows us and lets us see it for ourselves, and then we can see it. She does not, she's so gentle and kind about how she explains it, and we can
Oh,
make up our
Amy.
own mind. So yes, so
I'll tell
it's
you
just
what,
been a
I obviously,
blessing.
being where I was, I knew there was something wrong, but I was not expecting that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, if you're actually watching something like television, that you're being pummeled with
Yes,
disinformation, narcissistic, nasty, ugly, slave-like system we're in. And didn't expect the
yes,
media, something that we thought we could, well, maybe not trust, but something, oh, look, there's a newspaper. Oh, look, this has happened. It's the
yes,
media are they're like one of the worst things.
yes. Well, I think ever since too that especially in America, that the government has really taken it over, and controls the
How can you
media.
put information out to the people but lie about the whole thing?
Quite
Yes,
easily.
Yeah, I
It's
know it's easily, because look, I mean, today I was even saying to
sure.
Patricia, like, how did they manage to get so many of us to believe it? But I thought about it, because we're back to that history thing, or what we think is history, or what we're told. We had the first, I know that James were like this, on obviously research. We were pretty electric, with the Tesla thing. We had electric cars,
yeah,
lorries. These
Yes.
things, these batteries could hold quite a lot of time, and also they could go quite fast. Like some of them could get nearly to 100 miles an hour. This is before the First World War. Then we get the
Mm.
First World War, the Second World War, that destroys most of Europe, and then we have to start all over again. So maybe when the politics came around, they were then telling, a bit like they caused it, and then they're telling everybody, we can help you, rations, then we'll rebuild everything. And maybe the people just got into all that, yes, we need to be rebuilt, yes, we need help, and they saw it like that. And that's how they managed to do it. Because it's a bit like, we had a hangout with Crow, and he said, what was the matter with us? Probably about the 1930s. What were we doing? We didn't question anything. We just accepted it. And we're here now because of, say, the 1930s, when everybody seemed to be asleep. But we were going through all these horrific wars, well, what we're
Yes.
told they're wars,
I
and
don't. I don't think there is wars as such. I think it's been one ongoing war.
Yeah, and where the war is, it's against the people.
You think the way they describe the latest film, it's a blockbuster, right? I think these wars interspersed between crashing economies and like the Wall Street crash, they're the equivalent of the evening entertainment. They're your blockbusters when they destroy the architecture, as well as killing people, of course. But what I was going to say, with the newspapers in particular, you just look at the design of it. They're telling you a story. Now, you notice they're in columns. So are they telling you told stories?
Yeah.
And something I learned very early on, and anybody who's got a dog will probably understand this. If you want to play the game, you've got to let go of the ball.
Yeah.
So I mean, when I started looking, I laughed when I heard about flat Earth, and I thought, oh, it must be some archaic group who's got some medieval mindset. And so I thought, oh, I'm going to disprove this. And then the more I looked into it, I thought, actually, I can't disprove this. There's more to show that this is how it is. Because as Santos has said,
when you start using your common sense, that's all it is. Because when you know, like me, I mean, when I thought the sun was 90 million miles away, it looked 93. But now I think, well, if we can only see for 5 miles.
Well, it's like Santos says, if you're in a car.
If you can only see for 5 miles and you can see the sun, the moon, and the stars, they can't be very far away.
No.
That's
it's
great.
common sense then.
Exactly.
And it doesn't just stop. It's everything. They've done it to everything. Medication, education, words, everything. History.
Yes.
Everything that is a TION is a shun. So maybe we should shun the lot, because I mean, I went in on, I just went on Google and I put in Orion's belt and what's the distance to the first star. And it gives you this fantastical distance, and then you look at the other two, and they're millions of, or whatever, light years away from each other. And it's like, well, if you're in a car, you'll see all this is what, like Santos described it, and it makes perfect sense. If you're in a car, anything that's close to the vehicle, when you look out the side, will seem to whiz past, but everything in the far distance will seem to be stationary. So why is it when the Greeks talk of Orion's belt, we're seeing those stars exactly the same distance apart from each other? That never changes. They would be getting closer or further apart from each other from our perspective if we were moving. But we're seeing the same constellations going round and round and round.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I mean, I've gone so far as to suggest that what you're actually seeing, if it's waters above, it's like a reflection in the pond. And if you think of a baby's mobile where it projects on the ceiling, even the sun and the moon might be back projections from something coming up from Earth.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I can't prove that. It's just an idea.
I have to say this, that have you ever watched Stan Smith's work?
No. The trouble is, there's so much good stuff coming out at the moment, and I get sent links and things.
He uses 360 cameras, and then he puts his information through headset, VR headset.
Yeah.
And basically, what it does is it basically brings. It just changes, because obviously the sky is convex and it flattens it out, but it basically then makes the moon and the sun come out of the ground and go into the ground in your perspective.
Ah, that's interesting.
Do you know what I mean? So when the sun comes up, it sort of comes up from the ground and goes into the ground in a perspective.
Yeah. Well, it's the same with you if you happen to see an aircraft.
You take the pictures and put them into the headset. That's what it shows you. Which then, yeah.
Well, it's the same if you were able to observe an aircraft from when you first see it. I mean, that will appear to go down. Obviously, it does at an airport somewhere, but as soon as it's out of your sight, it doesn't mean it's gone. And the other thing I've said, I mean, just look up at the sky. When do you ever see the entire underside of clouds illuminated? Because if the sun is going down, if say, for example, they're 5 miles above the Earth, there should be a point where the entire underside of every cloud illuminates from the sun. And that never happens. You see the sides and the sun above the clouds, but you never see the undersides of them lit up.
Well, we had someone else who's a concaver, but I liked his theory of it. When we're in the ground, the sun appears to be in the clouds. When you're in a hot air balloon, the sun is above and it's there. Do you see
Yeah,
what I mean? It moves a bit
yeah.
to your
I,
perspective.
I think a lot of it is what people are saying is a dome. I mean, I think a reference to that is that shard in London. It's like a piece of glass that's fell out and landed in the ground. And that Hillary Clinton thing about we've election defeat. She referenced it. But I think it works a bit like magnifying glasses, convex and concave lenses. So it's not. I'm trying to think. It's not exactly at a right angle to us. I think the yin and the yang symbol seem to show that the path of the sun and the moon over the earth. You've got a trailing light behind the sun. I mean, there's been a lot of videos on this, how the sun goes down, then the light follows it.
Yeah.
And it sort of comes in. It
The
all sort
light
of
is a
comes in.
different thing. The light is a different thing to the sun, though. That's two different things.
Yeah.
No, this is so fascinating,
A
and
lot of people think that the light is the sun, but it's not. The light comes first, then the sun comes, and the sun goes, and the light goes.
That's it.
yeah. Well, I'm gonna have to excuse myself now from this awesome hangout because, well, Karen and Patricia know my father is quite ill, and my sister just informed me that my aunt and uncle are here for a visit, so they want to meet with me and everything. So I hate to have to leave the hangout, but I will listen in with, to it when Karen premieres it and everything. But I just
Yes,
want to
Amy.
say thank you so much, Karen, for inviting me. And James, it was so very nice to meet you. And
Likewise.
I love your idea. Oh, thank you so much. And I could have had a lot more to ask you, but maybe when we do Karen puts the premiere, I can ask some questions that I
Certainly,
had.
yeah.
Well, thank you.
If I don't know, I will say I don't know. I'm not going to try and bluff. It's. I mean, I don't know anything. I can only give you what I think. The conclusions I've reached.
Exactly. Sure, but it's just really interesting.
To meet another friend, isn't it, Amy?
It is. Yes, it is. It's wonderful. So that's one good thing out of technology is that, as we were saying, we can all speak together, even though we're miles apart. So I will say goodbye now, and I let you guys continue your awesome discussion. And I will tune into it when you premiere it, Karen.
All right, my darling. Thank you for joining us, Amy, and spending the
thank
time.
you. I love you, Karen. And
You,
Patricia and James. So lovely to meet you.
Lovely to meet you too.
Okay. Well, I'll let you all carry on. God bless you all. Love you.
Love you, Amy.
Love you, Patricia.
Take care.
Love you, James. So nice to meet you.
And you.
I will say goodbye for now.
Love you.
Speak again soon.
Love you. Okay.
Bye,
Carry
Amy.
on. Bye-bye, Patricia,
Bye, darling.
Karen, and James. Goodbye, darlings. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Amy doesn't like going.
No, it's terrible to. I mean, it's so nice to meet like-minded souls who are open. But like I say, this thing about let go of the ball. It's not just the shape of the earth. It's don't. I mean, I went through this process. When you're given this new information, it is to start with. You try and wrap it round on what you think you already know, and then it doesn't make sense. You have to do like David Icke says. You start with a blank bit of paper, and like, okay, we're assuming we know absolutely nothing, and we'll see where this goes. And whatever. I mean, that not Shakespeare. That Sherlock Holmes saying, I mean, and to share a lock is is the way to find the way home. It is all elementary, air, water, fire, and earth. Notice it's 22B 222 Baker Street. What are they cooking up? But the famous saying is, when you have ruled out everything else, whatever is left, no matter how impossible it might seem, must be the truth. And I try and go with that. So I don't say, oh, this is definitely right. This, it's free flowing. If there's new information that comes along, then I'll look at it. But I find generally it just adds to the existing picture. It's not conflicting at all.
Can I just say, James, that what I might do is, because obviously we on Unscrambled, we're talking about the case, and on this we've put onto Flat Earth. I might separate them out, but
Yeah.
like most of the hangout will go on to Unscrambled, but a bit of it I should put on to Sun and Moon, because I just think that I don't want to put too much on Unscrambled, because they're waking up, and I said some of them come over to Sun and Moon, but I just didn't want to be a flat earther used against me on that channel.
No, it's been used as a divide and conquer. The thing I've said to people, I said it's not necessarily the shape of the Earth, because I mean it would be very easy to prove if you're allowed to do it. You haven't got to go anywhere near the Antarctic. All you need to do is fly a plane round the equator line. That's if you could get permission from all the governments to go in their airspace, and then say you go 50 miles further south and take the difference between the two measurements. It would soon become apparent if the circle is getting bigger or
James,
smaller.
there's a really weird bit about this, right? In America, I know it's a bigger country, but the Big Dipper and things like the stars get very stretched out on their sky. So they don't see a lot of the Big Dipper. It doesn't quite mean the same for them, because they don't see, not saying all Americans, but I'm saying a lot of Americans, they might only see a bit of it. And then I went to Denmark, which is supposed to be a lot norther than us. And I had to sort of go down my friend's garden and then look into the field, and there was the Big Dipper going round in the field. Well, it was probably not even in our field, but in my perspective, it was in the field over there going round and round. But the Big Dipper goes round my house, and Polaris is almost over my house. So I'm thinking, well, that means that we're more north. We're more north.
Yeah, there's something very wrong with all of it. I mean, with the spiritual especially, it's often spoken about walking barefoot and earthing, and again this is women's intuition and the divine feminine, because notice how women are encouraged to wear high heels, because it's taking your souls out of contact with earth more than with men. And I think there's something in that, the fashions and things, because that's all appealing to the ego, and it's trying to separate us from our relationship with nature.
All the time.
If you mention something like the First World War and the Battle of the Somme, everybody thinks about the human casualties. No one stops and considers the charred remains of a tree, all the insect life and the bird life that supported, all the innocent animals that perished through all that. I mean, if you were to put all these wars and list all the casualties of everything living, it's going to run into, well, beyond trillions. But everybody forgets about that. The closest you've ever had is things like Warhorse, where there was horses and dogs and even dolphins involved in the Second World War, caught up in this conflict. But there's very little thought about outside of
our
human life.
ecosystem. Instead of it being, it's an ecosystem, they've turned it into a global system.
Well, this again, I think, comes from the Tartarian. There's that video footage. I mean, I don't know if it's true or not, or if it's staged, but you've got this church spire and you've got this electrical hub, and they're glowing balls. So I think that's where they've got the glow ball word from.
In the World Fair of 18, oh my God, it was 86 or 87. Can't remember which year it was. There was a Big Dipper they built. How many people do you reckon they could get on it?
No idea.
Well, the London Eye, I think, takes about 200 and something, and that's probably roughly what they make the rides. It took 2,000 people a ride.
Good grief. Well, we're definitely going backwards. And this is in an age when we're only supposed to have, well, you've got trains, which depending on how close that railway track has got to the site, then you've got horses and buggies and ropes and manpower. There's no.
It always amazed me when I looked, even in like, you're looking at in New York, and they've got buggies and they look pretty sort of bedraggled, the people. They look poor. And then
Yeah,
there's these big buildings there, 30 stories high. How could they be building that when they look in rags?
it doesn't make sense, does it? I mean, I can cut a piece of wood, but it's not going to be perfectly straight. And when you look at the precision of those old buildings, and it's the same style all around the world.
They destroyed some of the amazing ones. I remember Martin Leakey talking
Yeah,
about one that was soundproof, and it was there and then it was destroyed.
yeah. Well, Australia, I mean, that makes no sense. Within 20 years of going there, you've got, I mean, one of the most essential buildings is to build an insane asylum. This massive structure. And it's like, yeah, they're really going to need that there. And it doesn't fit the narrative at all with any of this. John Levi's channel is another good one for this. He does little 20-minute
Do you know
features
something
on.
as well? In
Sorry?
the UK, people don't realise, I'm not saying all the castles, but if you look at Dover Castle, if you look at Windsor Castle, if you look at, is it Maidstone? I can't know. Is it one of Maidstone? There's other castles. They've got pyramids in them.
Yeah. Well, trouble is like Windsor Castle. I mean, they've got Balmorals, haven't they?
And do you know that Buckingham Palace was actually modelled the same as Windsor Castle, but for some reason they've lost a big section of it.
Oh.
And there was a pyramid there because there were these drawings and it said Buckingham Palace and it had a mound in it, like Windsor Castle's got the mound. And they were actually drawn and they were almost the same. But obviously the one in the castle's gone.
Even that story with Buckingham Palace doesn't ring true. It was supposed to have been built for William IV, and he refused to move in it. I mean, we're in an age where there's Parliament, and it's like, well, how can I mean, that would have cost a fortune to build. So how can you say, well, I don't like it?
Built that? It's Tataria, isn't it? The Buckingham
Definitely.
Palace.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's where we get the word barbarian from as well. In fact, I would suggest it's not Tatarian, it's Tartarian, the Aryan, like breatharian, because none of these buildings seem to have any toilets in them unless they're still below the ground. I mean, I wish I lived in a 19th century terraced house, because I'd be having those floorboards up by now, and I'd be digging down below and having a look and see if there's any window arches.
What to see? But they have sort of said we went for the mud flood, and then some of the houses were built with basements in them. That wasn't because of flooding. So but we can't go back. But do you remember they've shown pictures? There was some that came up about 6-8 months ago where they dug up this road, and you could see that there was wires, there was windows. It's like, and these are where these buildings probably lasted, because maybe there's a couple of, or say at least a floor now as a foundation stuck in the mud. So the building would have even been better. But what amazes me is my mum and dad live in a really old place that was supposedly built about 1600. It's still there and they can live in it.
Yeah.
How could they be building houses like that we can still live in today if they were like in rags?
I know, it's crazy, isn't it? None of this adds up at all. I mean, you build a house, precision, equally spaced windows and everything, and then you think, oh dear, we've put the front door too high, we need to put some steep steps up to it. It just does. I mean, I've looked locally in Ipswich, and it used to be called Gipperswick, and I suggest the letter G is because it was a meeting, because it's the seventh letter, was a meeting of 7 tributaries that made up the River Orwell. I mean, the parks have got natural springs. You've got a road called Spring Road. You've got Upper and Lower Brook Street. The Bethesda Church, right by one of these springs, I looked up what Bethesda means, and it means swimming pool. And they've even said in that church they can hear the water running underneath. I mean, that saying about taking things to a whole new level comes to mind.
Yeah.
Because if there's a mud flood and you've lost potentially 2 or 3 floors, if you're to dig it out, what are you going to do with that material? Was it suitable to be fired as clay bricks, or was it just mud and not suitable for building? What did they do with it on the bits that they did dig out? Where did they put it?
Highgate Castle used to be where we had Parliament.
Yeah.
Parliament started here in Berkshire.
Have you looked into what the word parliament means in French? I can't actually remember, but it's got a meaning to it, and you think, oh, the parlia part of it, I think.
Can I just ask, Patricia's gone really quiet. Patricia?
I'm here.
Are you enjoying this, by the way? Because you've gone very quiet.
I am, yeah. It's interesting. It's bringing up a lot of, I don't know, it's like, I don't know if it's the brainwashing sort of element, but it's like, I keep referencing back to, think about if we didn't have all this technology and we were just three people on a hill, and I'd say to you, Karen, oh, look at them stars up there. Oh, that's got like a shape. And you only go by what you've got round you. So, say like the farmers, for instance. Oh, it looks like a cart. And the other one goes, oh no, it looks like a wheelbarrow. And then the third person, James, will say, we don't look like any of them. So this is everything, excuse me, everything that I have information about from whoever gives me that information, I always go back to that. Why, like it's a theory, isn't it? It's somebody's assumption of what they see, like perception. I don't know. Just, do you know what I mean? It's like that's what I take everything back to, is where did it start from? Like the language, the dialects of different places in England, where did they all stem from? These are the questions I ask. You know what I mean? To myself.
Well, it's like all these constellations. When you see them in the drawings where they actually put the lines in, I mean, they still don't really look like what they're supposed to be. I mean, when I look up at the sky and I think it's the Big Dipper. I mean, I look at it and think, oh, it's a frying pan or a milk saucepan, but it's about the only one I really recognise.
Yeah, take more notice of it, because you can see it twisting and turning and dipping and going up in the sky. That thing, I don't know how star circles and trails never pick up, or someone's never filmed that, because it doesn't do what the rest of the stars are doing. It's going around my house, like north, like south to north, west to east, north to south, and then east to west.
Well, they're talking of, there's a lot of from the mainstream science about this magnetic North Pole on the moon, so maybe it's something to do with that. I mean, they're probably telling a half truth with that anyway. But again, that'd be interesting to compare. I mean, the compass points to the magnetic north, so is every compass changing?
Well, my house sits north, south, east, west. The Big Dipper goes over it probably doesn't, but perspective when I'm here it's above my house, it's going across the edge of my house. So 2/3 of it goes around my house, 1/3 it goes across my house. So I'm not quite in the middle, am I? But I'm just quite amazed at that thing. Obviously, Amy's left us now, and obviously she has said that she could find a bit more information for her on that side. Patricia couldn't, and you had difficulty, James. So there is this no big system for birth certificates. We think we're living in this age of we know everything, we've got everything, and we haven't.
Well, no, I mean, you go to Ancestry and they might have county records for one parish. I know with the West Sussex County Council Records Office, they're keeping it to themselves because it's a moneymaker. Surrey, I think, did a deal with Ancestry, and they got a nice new building out of it. Their history centre, I think it's in Guildford. So each county has got a different way of dealing with things as well. So there is no central database for definite.
Which you think there would be something, considering they're telling us that we're living in an age of all this, where all this is there and we're being watched and etc., and wars and everything. When it comes to it, there's not this information.
And then you've got this thing about the DNA test. So we can tell you your origin. Well, I think everybody wants to know the origin of humanity, and that information is based on current population demographics. So it's telling you you've got a similarity to to certain people in this place or that place, but it's not telling you historical information of where you came from at all. That is fraudulent, what they claim, to be honest.
Yeah, but we're so stupid that we're not looking at what we're being told.
Well, the problem is, it's like people hear things the wrong way round. When you hear things like, oh, your post has been removed because it contravenes Facebook community standards, people are not realising it's not our community that they're referring to, it's their community. And it's the same with health and safety and security reasons. Well, whose health and safety and whose security are we talking about?
Don't forget, terms and conditions are not for you. They're for whoever's making them against you to make sure, and they're telling you everything they're not responsible for.
Yeah. Well, a government is exactly what it is. It's meant to govern, and it's governing us, and walls are laws. It's keeping us trapped.
Yeah, in Latin, as I was told the other day, ment is mind, so govern the mind.
Yeah. Well, Latin, I mean, who let in the Latin? Because the vowels are interchangeable. It's a let in. It's their way in.
On one case, Patricia was a bit shocked, considering that she was somebody that used to put in the information in Ancestry, weren't you, Patricia, that you couldn't find anything?
Yeah, and it's made sense now, James, with you saying about in this country, in UK, people hold on to the records, because some of the records, you'd think for, you know, all of America, that they're not called parishes, are they? Called states and stuff.
Yeah, you got states and counties.
You'd think they'd hand them all in, but it makes sense now why there isn't any. And I'm not saying for 1 minute that these people haven't died or they have died. We're never going to know, because if states are going to hang on to their records because it makes money, because if it's like everything for free, you know.
Well, this is it. I mean, every registrar's office is charging £10 for one certificate, so potentially you're going to be spending £30 per person, or 25, because the marriage obviously is, you've got two names there, but the birth and death certificates, that's £20 straight off.
Yeah,
and you start doing that for too many people, that's going to run in the thousands of pounds just to get this information.
Yeah, because I've done that myself. I've got everyone on my dad's side up to, you know, not necessarily all the children, but like the actual main parents.
Yeah.
I've got all their birth certificates, marriage certificates, death certificates. You know, some of them it didn't cost me no, even though I'd actually just paid for my dad's birth certificate and he died.
Yeah.
I got sent his birth certificate and his death certificate. So I'd already paid for them.
Yeah.
But I got them for now, so I've got 2 copies. But it's like, if I had ancestors in America, how would I know? I'd hit a brick wall, wouldn't I?
Yeah, there's another. Well, the states, you've got to really think of each state as a separate country in its own right, because they have got different laws depending on which state. I mean, the myth over here is everybody drives at 55. Well, Ohio, I can tell you, is 65 miles an hour anyway. But I mean, I'll give you one very quick example. I've got 2 William Brockhursts, both born in 1666. It just says.
Yeah.
See how easy it is for them to manipulate our past, and we can never connect it back. We can't even do it for the last 100 years.
Well, even if you're lucky, the parish registers didn't start till 1538, and a lot of parishes viewed it as a suspicious way. This is going by the official narrative on it, that it was a sort of stealth tax, so they were reluctant to actually do it anyway.
Is that, James, because a lot of people were working on the farmland of the churches, and churches owned a lot of land, and the people then were living on the land of the churches. So that's maybe why it started. I mean, nowadays the churches have sold off a lot of land, and a lot of people aren't working for the church anymore.
No.
Do you see what I mean? A lot of people were working for the churches then.
Well, certainly with Sussex, it was something like 90% were involved in agriculture. It was a threshing machine that was supposed to have made them unemployed when that came in. But again, I mean, this is like 1830. So how much of this is actually believable that we're actually being told today?
I know.
I think that eventually the easier route will be the spiritual route, and I think we do have the memories of our ancestors within us anyway. And once we've opened up our senses, we'll get that information. The other route is an ego route, in a way, going down this family history, because although it's fun and fascinating and it's very time absorbing, it comes to a point where you just can't go back any further, because there isn't anything, unless you happen to be a lord or a lady. If you're a peasant, then you don't even exist in those early records. And even of the wealthy, how many of the women really get mentioned by name? They're always like a back seat, and left in the background. This is the thing this is one of my pet hates. Why this women are lesser than men, because that's ridiculous anyway. Men can't have children, even if Hollywood wants to try it. But the whole thing is ridiculous, and it should be equal rights, equal status. I mean,
a lot of women are going to find that.
Yeah, well, but that's just how I see it. I mean, from early on, I thought, this doesn't ring true. This is unbelievable. It's like, and not only that, they're saying that about my mother. Because everybody is easy. It's very easy to project it on when it's not in my backyard, sort of thing. But everybody has a mother, and if you're treating women as lesser, that's your own mother and your own wife and your own sister and daughter. It's stupid. It really is stupid, that whole thinking.
Nothing's about being.
Sorry?
Nothing's about being equal, is it?
Well, I think that's the easiest split. The most obvious way of dividing humanity is divide it into men versus women, and we give men the easier ride, and we put them in the higher position. So a lot of men are like, oh, thanks very much. They're happy with that. And I mean, some men are just horrible. Let's face it. Oh, it's true.
No comment.
I do feel sometimes that I don't want to be classed as male, because they're an embarrassment, because the way they behave. Well, I've seen it so many times. You'll see these men that look like they're pregnant, they're balding, and they'll see a woman walking down the road who's like 30 years their junior, going, hello, darling. And it's like they're really going to look at you looking like that.
That it just reminds me of, because I do, well, I say I do, I'm into sewing and stuff, and I've been looking at fashion through the history, the timeline, and in particular, because obviously I've not done a lot of research, but I was looking at 1920s, how they're supposed to be short, but that's because men they saw what they wanted to see.
Yeah.
And it's like the women that had really thin waists. It's not that they had thin waists, they're padded at the top to make them look like a V-shaped, like a bow, because that's what men desired.
And that pulling the corset in so they can hardly breathe as well, going through agony.
Though that's a bit debatable, because it's a silhouette that it causes. The waist isn't any smaller. It's not pulled in. It's just that they pad the top bit to make it look more like a triangle going down to your waist, and then the same opposite way. So you get that illusion that you've got a really small waist. And the corsets, there's different types of corsets. There is the boned ones, and then there's ones without bone. It's just to cause that illusion.
Yeah.
But this is what the assumption is that they were really tight, these corsets. And I'm not saying there weren't people that wanted them really tight, but the majority of them, and these pictures that I show you, are the upper class.
Yeah.
They're not the lower class that didn't wear corsets because they couldn't afford them. They was lucky just to be able to get a piece of material and make it into a dress or something.
That's it, yeah.
It's how they wanted society to look. that all these women were beautiful. And it goes back to what you were saying, Karen, about people that, you know, didn't have the money to buy these fancy clothes were the ones that were supposedly building these buildings. It just didn't, they're not giving us the whole truth. They're giving us a snapshot of the posh people, the elite or the upper class, when in reality, the poor people could just about afford to get clothes. And they had to make do and mend, but the others could spend fortunes on this bit of fabric and make them a gown that was like 15 yards of material.
Even the man's suit, it was called a Sunday best because it was the equivalent of buying a three-piece suite. It was tailored, and you may do with that for the rest of your life. It only came out on special occasions.
Yeah, and you were buried in it probably as
yeah.
well.
Oh, yeah.
And in the Victorian age, didn't they have photos of the dead? So like they were dressed in the best clothes, and you know, because they could only afford to have a picture taken at a special occasion. I don't know what they did when it was a marriage. Did they bother that much? I don't know, but
often with the marriages, they would go down to the photographer the week before, and they'd be dressed up in the clothes, and this is why they look so glum, I think, as well. Because you notice nobody smiles in those old pictures. I don't know when that came in.
Yeah, but we don't know how much of that's true anymore now, do we?
Well, this is the thing. I'm only going on.
I mean, people, if this is true, the Rife machine should be used in all hospitals. You wouldn't need all the medication then. Look up Rife machines. I put a video on Scrambled. That was made in the late 1800s. So was contact lenses, but they were obviously little slithers of glass. But they were created in the 1800s. Like, what the hell happened? Like, we were creating such amazing things.
Yeah.
Or supposingly, because we don't know how much of it's true anymore. I mean, you know, like electricity. It's a lie. We've had electricity or a form of electricity for centuries.
Yeah, you've got these, well, something like St Pancras Station. How many people would it take to build that? And yet we've got this picture, or we're told this story of child labour with sweeping the chimneys and going down the mines, which implies a labour shortage, that they've got to use children to do this. It's like, well, where were all the adults then?
Yeah, there is a big bit with the mudblood about children. Like, there's a lot of children and a lot less adults.
Yeah, I think. Well, I think this is where the catacombs comes in. I don't think they actually bury anybody, because I think the human body is too toxic to put in the soil. Because when those curtains go round for a cremation, you don't know what's really being burnt there. You don't know what's coming in a Hercules bomb draped with an American flag. That could be opium. That could be organ harvesting. Martin's covered this. You look at the use of human blood in building construction in a US patent. It adds a whole new meaning to being a pillar of the community. Blood red brick. I mean, what is mortar? I mean, mort is the French word for death, and tar could be a reference to death of Tartaria.
We have got off a bit off the subject there, but it's so hard not to talk. It's so hard not to talk about so much. But we can talk for a few minutes, but I think we're just then. Can we end because we've been going now for over 2 hours. That's all right, James. It's hard to stop, isn't it? Because we've probably like a few hours. We're saying goodbye now. Thank you so much, James, Amy, and Patricia.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Lovely to meet you all.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Are you still recording?
No, I'm just going to turn it off. Go on, Patricia. Go on.
I was just going to say, I'm all for recycling. Were you saying about mortar and stuff? I'm like, I don't quite mean it in human recycling, but I'm all for recycling.
I thought you were going to go about, I love you all, because you moan I cut you off.
I know, I was going to, but I just thought I'd just put that bit in. I love you all. Sorry.
Anyway, I'm going to stop the recording. Patricia, I love you. Thank you very much, James, Amy. Mwah.
Love you all. Thank you.